What's going on, college football fans, and welcome back to the First and Long College Football Show. As always, I am your co-host Marcus, and I'm joined, as always, by your other co-host Mason. Mason, how are you today? We've got our Week 4 prediction show, and there's been a lot of pressure building up for these matchups throughout the week. Lots of conversations went on, and I think there's some people that are really excited about the matchups we've got in Week 4. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Yeah, and you couldn't be more right. There's been a lot of conversation just on our YouTube page, let alone in the college football space, about these five games that we're going to talk about tonight. And then there's a handful of other ones too that are also super interesting. But we've only got so much bandwidth to cover five games. Is a lot for us. We're gonna roll through these and you guys tell us what you think. Tell us your comments. Tell us what you think about the game. This is as much your channel as it is ours in a lot of ways, and so we want you guys to tell us where we're wrong. Tell us what you like about the show, and tell us your thoughts on the game. We learn a lot from you fans. We can only learn so much about your teams, but you guys keep us informed a lot of times throughout the season, and we just want to keep that going. We want to keep this community alive, and we really appreciate everybody watching, commenting, and supporting the channel.
Yeah, we certainly do. It's been a lot of fun this week, and guys. I try to respond to everybody's comments, but I've had to dig into these matchups, and it's taken a lot of time. And I really just wanted to make sure that, as far as I'm concerned, there wasn't a leaf unturned in trying to figure out ways to victory for each of these teams, and specifically in this Tennessee at Oklahoma matchup, which we'll start off with first. But we've got NC State at Clemson, we've got USC at Michigan, we've got Utah at Oklahoma State, and we've also got Illinois at Nebraska that we're going to talk about as well. So again, thank you all for joining us on the First and Long College Football Show. If you're not subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing that today. But please, everybody, hit the like button so that everybody in the college football universe can come and see what we've got to say about this. Really helps get the word out there, and let's represent college football well, and make it trend. Let's go. This is a big matchup that everybody's going to be talking about this weekend. It's the Tennessee at Oklahoma matchup. Sorry about that, guys. Tennessee visits Norman, Oklahoma, to welcome in the Oklahoma Sooners to the SEC, Mason. It's their first SEC matchup since joining the conference here in 2024. Going down at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Tennessee, as of right now, is a 7-point favorite in this ball game, and the over/under is set at 57.5. This is a much anticipated matchup, a game that many SEC fans and fans of SEC teams have been waiting for. We're all ready to see Oklahoma, the new shiny toy in the SEC, right? We're all ready to see what they're made of. And it just so happens, Mason, that Oklahoma is being welcomed into the SEC by Tennessee, and it just so happens that this is one of the best Tennessee teams that we've seen in years. This is a really tough matchup for the Oklahoma Sooners, but it's also the toughest matchup that Tennessee will have seen at this point in the season for sure. NC State was a game that, everybody kind of had circled in the offseason for Tennessee as being a game that we're going to see what Tennessee's made of. We're going to see what Nico Iamaleava. I have it. I have the
Hey,
enunciation written.
you
Yeah, how
got it.
about
You've
that?
been doing your
How about
homework.
that? Tennessee fans taught me something this week. That is one thing I gathered from the comment section. If my camera was better, I would show you, but I had to write out the enunciation of it on my paper there. But this is a game that a lot of people had circled to say, let's see what Nico has in his bag of tricks, because playing on the road in this atmosphere is going to be a really tough task, Mason. Um, let's what do you think about this matchup? Because the first thing that comes to my mind, because I know what Tennessee and Josh Heupel, I know what they're going to look to do first and foremost. They're going to look to run the football in this game, and I think a lot of this game kind of boils down to the fact that, you know, if Oklahoma can't stop the run game of Tennessee, it's going to be a long, long night. It's going to be a long, long night. What are your thoughts on this football game? I feel like a lot of it, obviously, almost all college football games come down to the trenches, but I really feel like an X factor for this one is the Tennessee run game and the Oklahoma run game for that matter as well. But the ability for each one of them to make the other one dimensional here.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about kind of set the stage here for this game. This is Josh Heupel's return to his team, the Oklahoma Sooners, where he won a Heisman, won a national championship, coached for a couple of years before seemingly, look, I'm not an OU fan, but it seems like the OU fans kind of ran him out of town for the most part as an offensive coordinator. Obviously, they don't make the hiring and firing decisions, but it seems like he was not very welcomed as an offensive coordinator at OU. So there's a little bit of added fuel to this fire for this football game. And look, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk a little bit more about the game itself. But I think that is a storyline that we will hear about all day on Saturday, and I'm super excited for that aspect of things. But when you get into the X's and O's, and look, we did a preview show, an early preview, just kind of off the dome, Sunday night. Our initial thoughts about this game, but now that we've had a chance to go in and break these teams down, one of the things that I'm realizing, you mentioned the run game for Tennessee, which has been phenomenal. This is a Tennessee team that wants to run the ball first.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, they got some dudes up front, Mark. They got some absolute studs up front, and I don't mean just guys who play really well, rush the pass or anything like that. I mean some big ass dudes. They got a lot of size up front. They're very physical, and I'm not saying that Tennessee's not going to be able to run the football. But what I am telling you is that matchup-wise, Oklahoma matches up pretty well inside the box. And one of the things that's going to be interesting, we'll get in. Well, I see you've got the offensive defensive lines up here right now, but I mean, you look at the size here.
Let me pull up. Let me pull up. Oh, here we go. This is
there. Okay. Okay. Yep. So you've got Mason Thomas there at 6'2", 240 is what you have him listed at. You got 6'4", 265 with Ethan Downs, big country boy, right? Coming off the edge there. And then in the middle, you've got looks like 6'1", 320, and then 6'3", 325. Just some really big guys. Dominic Williams comes over from TCU. He's been a stud. And what the thing that Oklahoma is going to have to do in this game to stop Tennessee's rushing attack is play with less guys in the box, because what Tennessee likes to do is spread you out along the perimeter and then kind of run it up the middle. That's their first attack. If Oklahoma is going to want to stand a chance in this ball game, they're going to have to go super light in the box. And I mean super light. I'm not saying 7 guys in the box instead of 8. I'm talking 5 guys in the box. 3 down linemen, 2 middle linebackers. Let's go. I mean, that's what they're going to have to do. That's what Georgia has done. Georgia's been the only team that stopped this Tennessee offensive attack outside of South Carolina in 2022. But what Georgia does is they have a light box in the interior, and then they say, hey, you're going to have to beat our 5 guys up front with 7 guys on the offense, right? Because you got 5 down linemen, a running back, and a quarterback that's not afraid to run it. Is Oklahoma going to have the speed to handle that? I know they have the guys up front. I know they have the physicality. We've got the defensive line up there, but Danny Stutzman's 6'4", 245. I didn't realize he was that freaking big. That's a massive middle linebacker, and he plays really fast as well. So physically, Oklahoma's got the dudes to stop the run. Now, whether or not they do it is another story. Again, you've got basically 5-on-5 when you look at just the linemen. So you're going to have a lot of 2-on-1s, and these linemen up front, the defensive linemen for Oklahoma, they're going to have to win some 2-on-1s. And on top of that, while they're holding up their block, somebody's going to have to be side to side. And I don't. That's my question for this Oklahoma defense. Do they have the speed? I know they got the size, but do they have the speed to be able to handle this spread offense handle the speed or the spread laterally of this offense and still be able to cover at the same time. That's a big question mark for me, Mark. What do you think about the physicality and the speed of this Oklahoma defense?
Well, first of all, we've got some injuries that we've got to talk about with Oklahoma because they've got a slew of them, to be honest with you, Mason. And we're not going to get answers on all of these before Saturday, guys. So we'll kind of. I'm not going to dump all of them on you right now, but the reason I bring it up right now is DeJoun Terry is one of the guys that he's questionable at this point. I don't know what. We're not going to get a straight answer. I watched a 45-minute Brent Venables press conference today just to get to the end of it and him just be like, you know, y'all know as much as I do. You know, they just show up to practice, and whoever's there, I practice them. You know, and so a lot of gamesmanship there. I feel like from the ball coach. So Dejon Terry went down in this Tulane game this past week. Never came back. Went back on the sideline. I think without his pads on and stuff like that. So that's interesting. That's one of your biggest guys right there in the middle of this defensive line. I'm not saying that this offense can't operate without him. And he's a former Vols player, by the way. Kind of funny how that works. I know he'd love to get in there and play against his old team. But yeah, Mason Thomas, R. Mason Thomas. I think you pronounce it R. Mason Thomas. He was one of the defensive players of the week last week. Um, this is a real deal dude on the ends here, and I love the talent that you've got on the ends. Not crazy deep, not crazy deep. You've actually got more options at the defensive tackle position. You've got some guys that have come in. Trying to find my notes here. Grayson Halton is one of them as well, 6'2", 291. He's got 7 tackles and 2.5 sacks already this year. And then David Stone, a guy that we talked about in the offseason, you know, as potentially being a guy, if he can come of age at the right time, maybe this is one of those times. Maybe you get a flash or two from him. He had 2 tackles against Temple. This was, if you don't know, guys, he's a freshman 5-star, came in throughout the offseason there. And look, you've got a mix of really elder statesmen in this room, the defensive line I'm talking about, and then you've got a bunch of young guys. You got a ton of young guys. So we'll see. Can some of those young guys interject, you know, themselves and be able to come up big in a big situation? We'll see. We'll see. Tennessee offensive line wise, though, I really like Cooper Mays and I really like Javonte Spraggins. Those are 2 really, really strong spots of this offensive line. And then you go and you get Lance Hurd, who was a former 5-star guy, get him from LSU, and then John Campbell returns with pretty good bit of experience from last year. Not exactly a returning starter, but a guy that had a lot of reps from last year. Your weak spot's at the left guard spot. And overall, if there is a weakness on this offense at this point, it would be the offensive line. I don't know how much of a weakness you could really point out if you look at Tennessee's numbers this year. But 3 sacks allowed this year by this Tennessee offensive line. That's 1 per game. That's tied for 36. You know, 36 is a good number at this point in the season. There's teams that haven't given up a sack, and obviously that's not realistic as the year goes on. So a lot of those numbers as we get to conference play are going to come back to reality for a lot of these teams. But 3 sacks is not a lot given up so far this year. You know, we're going to see who can win this matchup. Oklahoma needs to get 3 sacks in this football game, Mason. You know, look, we've talked about this game already some this week. It's not a secret. The path to victory for Oklahoma is more narrow than it is for Tennessee at this point. And a lot of it has to do with injuries and things, but a lot of it also just has to do with Tennessee has been building up to this point over the last few years. And Oklahoma, you know, I love what they're doing with the defense. This is the best defense that we've seen in a while for Oklahoma. But I feel like the offense is still another year away from being able to compete for some of the things that the Sooners fans feel like they have every right to compete for in college football year in and year out. So this is a different looking Oklahoma team that we've seen. And look, defense keeps you in games. How long can the dam hold up? You know, the offense is going to have to give some relief to this defense. I like this defense for Oklahoma. But if the offense can't sustain drives in this football game, give that defense a rest. And by that, I mean play defense with your offense. You got to keep the ball away from Tennessee's offense. If this Oklahoma offense can't do that, it's going to be a long night, and it's just a matter of time before the dam breaks. We watched it happen with Georgia and Clemson earlier this year. Clemson has a really good defense, y'all. But guess what? By halftime, the dam broke, and then they give up like 30 points in the second half. And I hope I don't see that happen with Oklahoma right here. But you never know. Let's kind of start back from the beginning here, because we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that this is Nico Ia Mali Ava. I'm telling you, I'm getting it. I'm going to learn it. Ia Mali Ava. This is his first time going on the road as a SEC starting quarterback, Mason. And I know this isn't a traditional SEC stadium or whatever, but let me tell you something. It will be a rocking. There's a reason Oklahoma was invited into the SEC. And they're very excited about this thing out there in Norman. Okay. I think we have a right to ask questions about Nico in this situation. How will he handle it? The guy seems like he's been really cool under pressure. He seems really mature, wise beyond his football years. I've talked to people about this in the comment section this week. But with all that being said, he's not the only one stepping out there on this offense. There's going to be 11 guys out there, and how are they going to respond to this situation? So there is always a chance that Oklahoma comes out here and they're playing with their hair on fire, and if Tennessee isn't able to put out that fire very early in this football game, watch out, because the crowd is going to be breathing down your neck, just like we saw last week at Kentucky with Georgia. Kentucky doesn't have a great home field advantage, I understand. But if you let somebody hang around in a football game and a sold-out crowd feels like they've got a chance, and next thing you know, they do have a chance. That's whenever things get really, really tough out there on the road. And I'm interested to see how Nico handles it. I am not saying that he won't handle it well. I have every reason to believe that he will handle it well. But I still got to see it with my own eyes. And Jackson Arnold has still got things that he's got to prove as a quarterback. He ran the ball really, really well last week. Can he incorporate that into this football game today? He's the leading rusher for the Oklahoma Sooners this year, Mason. So without his legs, can this offense generate enough run game to be able to keep the Tennessee front seven off balance and be able to do things in the passing game as well? That's a big question for me as well. So I know Tennessee comes in here as the knight in shining armor, and they look like one of the best teams in college football, and we both agree with that. But they still got something to prove here. They haven't played a football game like this year. So I am certainly intrigued to see how both of these teams respond. What do you think about these quarterbacks in this situation?
Well, I think that we know a good bit about Nico already. We've seen a lot of pass attempts from him. We've seen some really good football from him. And so I guess I don't have as much of a question on Nico and what he's going to be able to do in this football game. But I do have some questions about Jackson Arnold. It seems like Oklahoma went from, let's in week one, it seemed like Jackson Arnold was passing the ball more. And then in week two, it was like maybe a little bit more run. And then in week three, it was heavy on the run. So are we going to see more of Jackson Arnold tucking the ball and running, more design runs? That I don't know. If that's the case, I don't like Jackson Arnold in this matchup. I think, and it's been well documented at this point, the Tennessee defense is weakest on the back end, but they haven't been tested yet, right? So if you're going to beat Tennessee, you got to take some shots over the top. You got to. And so far, Jackson Arnold has not been able to do that proficiently, I would say. He has at times, but not proficiently. Now, it sounds like Oklahoma is going to get Nick Anderson back. That's a huge target, a 6'4" weapon, on the perimeter that they've been lacking. And maybe, maybe he's able to get open enough, and Jackson Arnold has a strong enough connection with him that a few of those plays go over the top, and he's able to take it to the house. I don't know, but the bottom line is if Arnold's not able to win over the top, they're going to struggle because the run game has been very deficient for Oklahoma already. It seems like a lot of the run game is on Jackson Arnold at this point. He's going to have to prove it with his arm in this week. I think, if nothing else, this game intrigues me the most because we're going to learn a lot about both of these teams from this matchup. And Jackson Arnold has pretty much the whole offense on his shoulders at this point. Doesn't get much in the offensive line, which we'll get to here in a minute. But how does he handle that pressure against this defense? Because they are going to bring pressure. That's the question mark for me in this quarterback matchup. I feel like I said, I feel like I know what I'm going to get out of Nico. I don't. He might struggle on the road here early. Maybe the first couple of series, we may see a little bit of jitters. This is kind of a Heisman moment type of game for him.
Right.
Maybe he feels that a little bit. But Jackson Arnold obviously has more questions to me than Nico in between the two quarterbacks here.
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of Nico's game is timing, and his timing has been impeccable so far this year. I mean, excuse me, Mason. Last week there were situations where there wasn't even wide receivers open yet, and he was throwing them open, and that is what I mean by being wise beyond your years. The old saying is, if he's even, he's leaving. Right? You ever heard that? If the wide receiver is even with that cornerback at any point, he's leaving him.
Mm-hmm.
And Nico really trusts his wide receivers. I'm interested to see what he does if somebody gets his timing off a little bit. And I think Oklahoma does have a chance to be able to do that. Because if you don't, look, if we've said it, and we've said it, and we've said it. This offensive line has not been tested. So let's see what they can do if Oklahoma can figure out a way to provide some pressure. If they can figure out a way to provide it. All right, let's talk about this Tennessee defensive front. Mason, have you heard what's going on with James Pierce or not? He has like no stats this year. Played very little, from what I understand. Maybe like a half of football or something. So do you know what's going on here?
I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I have, in
Tell us,
looking up the
Tennessee
stats
fans, in
and
the
all
comment
that.
section. I know y'all are watching.
Yeah.
Tell us what's going on with that, because I meant to look it up before we got on air. The reason I didn't look it up because I don't feel like it's as big of a deal. I mean, I look. Don't get me wrong. I know that sounds crazy, but this room's really deep. I feel like if he didn't play, I don't think it would make a huge difference. I don't think it changes the outcome of the football game necessarily. Now, if it's a really close football game, obviously I could be wrong on that. But this Tennessee defense has looked really good without him, and you know what I'm saying? So, Tennessee fans, please tell us in the comment section, what's going on with that. I'm interested to hear. But, look, this has been a really good front seven, and we've gone on and on and on about it so far this season already. I love how deep this group is. You guys that aren't even pictured here, Mason. Omar Norman Lott, Elijah Simmons. I mean, they're providing some good depth. Tyree West, with a big, he's a big old defensive end. Joshua Josephs. There's guys that you can just like rotate behind the guys that are pictured here of Bryson Eason, Amari Thomas, Dominic Bailey. Just guys that are really, 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 really good. And that's the difference between this Tennessee team and the one that we've seen in the years past. I started the season talking about, how the offense would leave the defense out to dry all the time. And that was literally one of the only things you could point to, a common denominator in Tennessee's losses to some of these big football programs like Georgia or Alabama over the last few years. Now they can go fast, which they have. They're one of the quickest teams to snap the football, and they don't have to worry about their defense getting, absolutely wore out. They've got guys that they can rotate in, and that makes all the difference in the world. The reason that I made this slide was more for the offensive line of Oklahoma because I wanted to talk about that. It's been an area of concern. We previewed this team in the offseason. We said, oh, watch out. They're going to have to fix this offensive line or it's going to be trouble. And at times it's been a little bit of trouble. 9 sacks allowed in 2024. That's 118th out of 133. So, I talked about the stats are kind of skewed early in the season, and, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. That's a lot of sacks given up so far in 2024. So, beyond that, we'll get to the running backs here in a minute. But actually, here's the stat right here: 67th nationally rushing yards per game. So you're giving up sacks, and you're not doing great blocking for the run game. But I think I got a little bit of a silver lining for this Oklahoma group here. I have Branson Hickman listed as the center. That's the guy that transfers over in the offseason from SMU. Really, really, really good center that is going to do good things here at Oklahoma. I really do believe that. When he went out, it caused an absolute mayhem. You had redshirt freshmen come in, no playing experience, got to jump out there on the line. You already had another injury at the position, so it was just immediately just causing tons of issues on this offensive line. That they haven't played 2 games where they had the same starting offensive line all year. I believe he's going to be back. He dressed for the Tulane game and didn't play. Him and Nick Anderson both. So I think both of those guys come back. You mentioned Nick Anderson already. But I think Branson Hickman's going to come back as well. And if he does, that makes a really, really, really big difference for this offensive line. And those rushing yards, I think, are skewed. I really, really do. I think they're skewed. I know this isn't the deepest running back room in the world, but if you've got Branson Hickman back, Michael Tarquin ended up being a hit. Michael Tarquin is the highest rated offensive lineman on this team, and it's not even close, really. But he's got NFL numbers from Pro Football Focus. So Michael Tarquin is one to certainly, I think you can count on him. I think you can count on him. If Branson Hickman's back, that puts Jacob Sexton at the left guard spot. He's not worried about trying to go play a tackle position, which he can't play. It just changes a lot, Mason. It changes a lot. You brought in 5 experienced newcomers through the portal this offseason, and then you got 4 young returnees and 5 freshmen. So you got this group right here, minus the injuries, and then you got a bunch of freshmen behind them. So this is the group that Oklahoma's going to have to do it with this year. And if they're healthy, I don't think they're half bad. Are they top half of the SEC? I think they're right in the middle. I don't think they're top half. But if you're looking at Tennessee's offensive line, I know they don't offensive line go on offensive line here, but Tennessee doesn't have the best offensive line in the world necessarily. So I just, I think they have enough guys here. If they get healthy, they can be serviceable. Now, the defensive line for Tennessee, it's going to depend on what they want to do. This is what I'm curious what your take is on this football game. What is Tennessee's game plan here on defense, do you think? Because I think that you're going to be rolling out Jackson Arnold like crazy. He throws good on the run, and not to mention you're giving him an opportunity to run. We saw him take off on design runs a lot last year, and I've heard Tennessee fans say, "Oh, we hope he runs. We hope he runs." He's pretty fast. And pretty good runner. It seems like he's pretty good at getting out of bounds and everything too. He needs to. But does Tennessee blitz here? That's kind of my question. I feel like Tennessee feels like they should be able to win this without having to bring extra help. And that, I think, needs to be the game plan, at least starting out in this football game. I think you just need to bring 4 if you're Tennessee. Keep your gap integrity, right? And see what they're wanting to do here. Because I think if you over-pursue this guy, I think it's big trouble. I think he's going to take off up the middle. He's going to gash you, and he's going to run, and I think he's going to be successful doing it. It's so hard to stop a running quarterback. And with all that being said, you're probably going to have a spy on him. So that's one less guy that you can blitz as well. So if you're blitzing, not only are you wasting a personnel on bringing them on the blitz, but now you've already wasted another guy over here, you know what I'm saying, shadowing the quarterback. So you've got 2 wasted players out of 11 out there, and that certainly does create an advantage, I think, for Oklahoma offensively, who have got some really good wide receivers. We'll get to here in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I think the game plan should be rush four, right? Sit back. Let's see what they want to do. Let's see what Oklahoma wants to do. They haven't had a strong running game. They're going to want to establish the run, but if you sit back with four, play gap integrity, contain the edges, make sure that that Arnold is not able to break containment, get outside, and then take off. I think that's going to give you the best opportunity to win, at least early on. Now, maybe Arnold's able to take advantage of that. Maybe you see some shots over the middle. Maybe you see some shallow routes that just kind of get squirt behind that defensive line. Um, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what Tennessee is going to be able to do outside of that, because I think that that's been the game plan for teams going up against Oklahoma so far, is to win what you can up front with your defensive line, trust the defensive line to get pressure, and then kind of sit back. Then you got seven sitting back in zone and man coverage. Maybe you go single high safety, play some man throughout, and you've got Arian Carter or Peely, containing the quarterback, containing Arnold and spying Arnold. But I don't even know if you necessarily have to spy Arnold right off the bat. I don't think that should be the game plan going into this game. I'm with you. I say you rush four, play zone, see what the game plan is. Let's kind of get into their hand a little bit here if you're Tennessee, and open it up and see what they're playing. To me, that's going to be the best bet. If Branson Hickman comes back, like you said, that's a huge addition to this offensive line that has struggled. I've got him listed as out. You just never know with these players. But one of the sites I'm looking at says that he's going to be out. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But if he's not able to go, that's a third string center who's got some snaps now under him. Maybe he's playing better, but you've got a lot of question marks on this offensive line. I think you trust the defensive line, though, to bring pressure with four, and then maybe in the third and fourth quarter you start seeing some more blitzes and things like that. If you're able to get Oklahoma into third and long situations, maybe that's when you start seeing more blitzing and things like that.
Yeah, and you Oklahoma fans, let us know in the comment section what's going on with Branson Hickman. I mean, we can't get a clear answer out of coach, and he's not the only one. It's all these coaches are like that, but Branson Hickman has an ankle injury, and I know that. Is it high ankle? Because if it is, he's out. If it's a regular, just I twisted my ankle, I think he'll be back. He dressed last week. He fully dressed last week. Him and Nick Anderson, and Nick was saying he was going to play last week. We'll get to the wide receivers here in a minute, but he dressed, and so that makes me think that there was a possibility, or in break glass in case of emergency type situation. But if it's high ankle, to get a high ankle sprain, you're almost better off breaking your ankle, because it just there's nothing you can hardly do. This Tennessee defensive line, guys, 160.7 total yards per game allowed, and that's as a defense. That's second in the country. This has been one of the best units in all of football. 56 yards per game rushing allowed. We'll talk about the offensive rushing power of Oklahoma, but Tennessee has been really, really, really good at stopping the run so far this year. Actually, let's talk about that Oklahoma running back room right now. Javonte Barnes is the leading rusher for the Oklahoma Sooners so far this year. 31 carries, 126 yards, and a 4.1 average. The Sooners are averaging 4.3 yards per rush in 2024. That's good for 71st nationally. So you're right in the middle of the pack as far as yards per rush. Not bad. Serviceable. Anything over 4 I would consider serviceable. 4.5 or better is ideal. But somebody that kind of popped out to me, Mason, is Taylor Tatum, a guy that we really didn't talk about a lot in the offseason. Freshman, he's had 15 carries so far this year, 102 yards total, 2 touchdowns. That's good for 6.8 average. And then Sam Franklin, the University of Tennessee Martin transfer, man, he had over 1,300 yards last year for Tennessee Martin. So a guy that certainly has experience, has reps, and knows what it's like to be successful at the position. Um, we'll see if he can get kind of a larger role, I guess, as the year goes on. Look, if you was to buy a stock, you wouldn't want to buy it high. You'd want to buy it low. Now would be the time to buy a running back stock from Oklahoma, in my opinion. Everybody's down saying this team's not going to be able to run the football. And I understand. I get it. Tennessee is an amazing defense. I'm not saying necessarily just in this game alone. On the long scheme of things, I think the Oklahoma running game is going to increasingly get better as the year goes on, so long as you get some of those pieces back on that offensive line. But Taylor Tatum is a nice surprise for that group. The linebacker room for Tennessee is, we kind of already talked about it. I think gap integrity, right? Gap integrity is kind of the key to victory for Tennessee in this one. I don't think you got to do anything special. Tennessee hasn't been a team that, while they do have a lot of tackles for loss this year, they don't have a ton of sacks. They're not bringing a bunch of blitz, and I don't think that changes here. I don't think that changes here. The best defenses in the country, guys. How many times did we talk about it, Mason, as Georgia fans in 21 and 22? Like, man, I wish we could sack the quarterback more. I can't tell if I had $1 for every time that I heard a Georgia fan say that during that time frame. I mean, I'd be a rich man. It didn't make a hill of beans. It was one of the best defenses in the country, one of the best defenses we've seen in the modern era of college football. And they didn't sack the quarterback a lot. They hurried the quarterback. They held him in the pocket when they needed to, and they were able to make teams one-dimensional. That's going to be the trick for Tennessee in this one. Make this Oklahoma offense one-dimensional, and stop the run game and put the game in Jackson Arnold's hand in the pocket and say, beat us with your arm. That's got to be the game plan, I think, here. What do you think about the Oklahoma running game so far this year?
I mean, I agree with you. You look at what they've been able to do. Gavin Sawchuk has been pretty much a non-factor at this point. He's averaging 2.19 yards per carry. There's a reason he's not listed, even though he was kind of favored to be the bell cow back, I think, at least from my perspective, looking at the Oklahoma offense in the preseason here. But Javonte Barnes, I mean, he's averaging over 4 yards per carry. It's not half bad. Hasn't found the end zone yet. Taylor Tatum has been a bright spot in the running game. He's averaging 6.8 yards per carry. And then Sam Franklin, you mentioned it, the transfer coming in, only 4 attempts, but 45 yards in those 4 attempts. It's good for 11.25 per carry. So, effectively, it seems like they are able to run the football if they're not going to Gavin Sawchuk. So maybe you see Taylor Tatum get a little bit more involved. Maybe you see Sam Franklin get a little bit more involved in this game plan this week. You've got to find something, though, because it hasn't been good enough. You can get great yards per carry, but if you're not getting the carries, it's not going to amount to a ton of yards, right? So to me, I think that Oklahoma's got to be pressured to find a way to establish a run game in this game. Now, on the Tennessee side, the defensive line has been the bulk of this Tennessee defense, and they will be for the remainder of the season. But we haven't seen Tennessee get challenged in the second and third levels of their defense. When you look at the stats, even the middle linebackers really aren't putting up a ton of stats because a lot of teams haven't been able to get past the first level of the defense, and that's a little bit concerning to me. If a team is able to do that, and that goes back to the Oklahoma offensive line. Are they going to be able to block up front to get to that second level of the defense? That's kind of the wait and see there for Oklahoma. But I do really like the linebackers for Tennessee. Really like Arian Carter. I think he's a great linebacker there, great young linebacker. And then Keenan Peely is the veteran, and he's played pretty well so far this season. I have my concerns. I have my concerns about the run game. but I don't think that we can just say Oklahoma is not going to run the football in this game or this season at all. I think that they have the right playmakers in the running back positions. Um, they're not they're not the best in the SEC at the running back positions, but with some better offensive line play, I do think that the running game does improve. It's got to be a factor in this game. It has to. They've got to go to it. They've got to really on first and second downs find ways to open up the run game. Get yourself in third and short, no more than third and four. And that just it has to be a part of the game plan. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they get better in 1 week, but against a tougher defense. But we've seen it happen before. Scheme can help with that a lot. Um, it's going to be interesting, but that is the matchup to watch. Is this Oklahoma running game versus the Tennessee run defense?
Well, and as we said, Jackson Arnold is the leading rusher for this team this year as far as yards go. So if they're going to run the football, I mean, you're going to have to use these guys that you see here on the right side of your slide. And Jackson Arnold's going to have to continue to do what he's done, especially this past week. He did a really, really nice job running the football, and I think he's going to have to do that again. I don't think you're going to be able to just rely on one room to get all the rushing done. I think the quarterback's going to have to help out. And we've seen what a rushing quarterback can do for a football team over the last decade. I mean, some of the best offenses that we've seen ever. Even like Joe Burrow and things like that. I mean, running the football as a quarterback is becoming more and more prevalent. All right, we've talked about some of the pass catchers for Oklahoma. We talked about Nick Anderson, hopefully going to be back for this football game. I have every reason to believe that he will be. And he's a young guy, but really, really popped last year as a freshman. And, man, he is the real deal, I do believe. So if you can get Nick Anderson back to play alongside Deion Burks, who has been one of the better wide receivers in college football so far this year, the most receptions ever through their first 3 games as an Oklahoma Sooner. And you can, I mean, you go ahead and go back and look at some of the Oklahoma Sooners wide receivers that have been through that program, over the last decades. Been some really, really dang good ones. He has the most receptions and I believe the most yards through first 3 games of his career at Oklahoma. Deion Burks is a real deal, folks. Just a human joystick, very, very hard to deal with. A guy that's got a ton of tread left on the tires. Didn't even play high school ball all the way through. Really is just now starting to hit the pinnacle of his athletic, life. So Deion Burks is really starting to feel himself. Watch out, because we don't know a ton about this Tennessee secondary. It hasn't been tested, but I can tell you right now, I don't care how good they are. Deion Burks is going to get his. So if Jackson Arnold has got time to throw the football and he can put it out there accurately, Deion Burks will do his thing. So I fully believe that. This is the best unit on this offense, and it's not even close, this wide receiver room. Now, I believe, I'm trying to think, there was another one. Nick Anderson was one that was hurt.
Jaleel Farouk.
Well,
Okay.
Farouk's gone for a while.
Yeah.
But that is a good point. So, Jaleel Farouk gone 6 to 8 weeks. That sucks. That's one of your most veteran guys. Is he the best playmaker on this team? No, it's not even close. But tons of reps, tons of experience, all that good stuff. Andrell Anthony. Is it possible that he makes his debut for the year? Right. That's a guy that nobody's going to talk about in any breakdown anywhere you look. But if he comes out there and plays, that's just one more thing to worry about. But Brendan Thompson's had a good year. Bauer Sharp's had a good year. Is the Tennessee secondary finally going to get tested? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, you hope so, because like you said, this is the strength of this offense. They are banged up. When you go down the list, Gibson, it sounds like he's going to be out, knee injury. Petaway is questionable. You got to find ways to get Nick Anderson and Deion Burks, really all 4 of these players involved. Oklahoma has shown an ability to go to the tight end. Bauer Sharp has played pretty dang well. Let's see, he's second on the team with 10 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown. Also, the other tight end, Jake Roberts, has 4 receptions for 56 yards. So, if it's a big ask, but I do think that you can undoubtedly say that the Tennessee secondary is going to be challenged more this week than they have in any other week prior. I think that's a given. You don't bring Jackson Arnold in here to Oklahoma to have him run the ball all the time. That's not the game plan. He's been able to do it effectively, and I think that him trusting his legs will be a huge factor in this game. I don't think he's going to run for 100 yards though. That's not the game plan. The game plan is to challenge the Tennessee secondary, and I believe that this offense will find ways to do that. They're going to get creative. You'll see some wide receiver screens, some quick slant throws and quick throws, quick wide receiver, like I said, wide receiver screens and throws to the perimeter and things like that. You've got to get the ball in Nick Anderson and Brennan Thompson and Deion Burks' hands specifically, and let them make some plays in space. That's your key to victory here. On top of establishing a run game. I don't think Oklahoma wins the game on the run. I mean, we mentioned the running backs, we mentioned the offensive line. They don't win the game running the football. That's not going to be the case. You're going to have to go over the middle and go deep occasionally. I don't have any questions with this wide receiver room. I really don't. I feel like they're going to be open in some cases.
Yeah.
The question is whether or not Arnold can stay upright, have time, and then deliver a strong throw. If he plays like he did in week 1, I thought he looked really smooth. I thought he was throwing the ball really well. Just didn't really have the time in that week. And if the offensive line for Oklahoma holds up and stands their guys up, then yeah, I do think that this Tennessee secondary gets challenged more than they have all season long.
Yeah, I mean, the jury's still out. I mean, 105 pass yards per game allowed. That's good for 4th in the country for this Tennessee secondary so far this year. 5.1 yards per pass allowed. That's good for 20th. I mean, just haven't been challenged. And you're right, Mason. It's going to depend on Oklahoma's ability to protect the quarterback. We already talked about the Oklahoma defensive line versus the Tennessee offensive line at the beginning of the video, so we'll kind of just keep it moving. How you doing? Keep it moving. Tennessee running backs versus these Oklahoma linebackers. This is a really, really pivotal point of this college football game right here. Really, any college football game, but specifically this one. Everything that Tennessee does is based off of the dive play, the read play, and then spreading you out, and then going deep. So none of that stuff works if Tennessee can't run the football. Tennessee has to be able to run the football on first and possibly second down if needed, but specifically on first down. Danny Stutzman is a linebacker for Oklahoma. If you have been under a rock for the last few years, welcome back to society. Danny Stutzman is a joy to watch. He's already got 33 tackles this year, man. Just absolutely tearing it up. We're gonna have to see him go to work, dude. I mean, this is gonna have to be his masterpiece right here. And I'm not saying that he's not up to it. I'm certainly not saying that at all. Samuel Omosigo. This is a guy that I think we mentioned in our preseason video. He's down there at the bottom of your linebackers page there. I don't know how much he gets in this football game, but he's a guy that's emerging and providing depth. He's got 12 tackles so far this year. Kip Lewis is a guy that Oklahoma fans and everybody will know. So he's one of your inside backers there. But I'm going to call him Sam O. Sam O is coming on. Will they be able to hold up against this Tennessee running back and rushing attack? 2.22 yards per rush allowed in 2024 so far for the Oklahoma rush defense. That's good for 11th nationally. They've been really, really good against the run. Tennessee has been really, really good at running the football. 6.96 yards per rush. So what gives here, man? That's really just kind of my question at this point. This is good on good right here. This is absolutely good on good. And Dylan Sampson is just the truth. I mean, he's really, really good. 45 carries, 357 yards, 9 touchdowns, 7.9 average. Crazy. Deshaun Bishop doing really well this year. You've got options with Peyton Lewis and Khalifa there, so tons of options. Not a worry in the world as far as depth. This is where this football game starts and ends, in my opinion. Can Tennessee run the football? What do you think?
Well, I think that they're going to struggle to run this week. I mentioned it earlier. This OU front seven, if you want to call it that, front five. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully they play a front five, maybe a front six if the tight ends get involved with Tennessee, which they've been great, by the way. I mean, Kitzelman. I remember picking at him in our Tennessee preview. We were talking about his best attribute was that he's a scratch golfer, and he looks like the best tight end on the team. So that's just throwing it back in our own faces here. But I think that the OU front is going to be able to handle Tennessee's offensive line pretty well. I think that when you look at the physicality that these linebackers play with and the size that these linebackers play with, I think that they're going to be able to fill the holes and plug some holes and make it a long day for Dylan Sampson. I think if you hold Dylan Sampson and you hold Deshaun Bishop to under about 150 yards total, and just the running game in general, not just those two players, but the running game in general, if you hold Tennessee to under 150 yards rushing, I think you set yourself up for success. Not saying that they can't beat you with the pass, but you want to make them beat you with the pass. You want to make Nico feel that pressure. And I think that this OU defense is going to be able to do that. Now, the question to me, it all revolves around scheme. OU does not really play five in the box. They don't really play a light box. That hasn't been what Venables has wanted to do with this defense so far. How do they play this? That's the biggest question mark for me. But as far as size and physicality and run defense and things like that, yeah, OU, they can definitely hang with Tennessee's running game. I was really impressed as I broke it down a little bit further than when we had talked about it on Sunday night. I do feel like this OU rush defense is elite and better than anything Tennessee has faced by far. By far. I mean, really, really good. I think that if Nico and Tennessee's going to win this game, it's going to be with Nico's arm, or maybe him running the football. And I don't know that there's a linebacker. Maybe Kip Lewis. Maybe he can spot Nico, but I don't think that these linebackers can really keep up with the speed of Nico if he decides to let loose and tuck the ball and run. But yeah, it was kind of surprising for me to come to that conclusion because I felt like going into this without looking at it deeply that OU was going to struggle to contain these running backs. But now I feel pretty good about this OU rushing attack or rushing defense, I should say.
Well, that changes a lot of things in this football game. It really, really does. And it is our last little thing to talk about here. The Tennessee pass catchers. You mentioned Kitzelman got a couple of touchdowns this year, but a little surprising who's leading the pack in this group. Brew McCoy is kind of a name, and Squirrel White is a guy that's not even pictured here. And it's not that he hasn't played or hasn't played well; he's played pretty good. Brew McCoy has played pretty good, but Deontay Thornton and Chris Brazzell are the leading receivers on this team and have looked really, really good. There's plenty of weapons here, I guess is my point. There's guys that aren't even pictured that you thought would maybe be one of the best wide receivers on this team, right? So I feel really good about the Tennessee wide receiver room. I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. I like these guys a lot. I liked them in the preseason. I like them now. 303 pass yards per game. That's good for 23rd in the country. 9.9 yards per pass attempt. That's good for 15th in the country. So as pretty much any statistical category in that has anything to do with Tennessee at this point, it's really good. The secondary for Oklahoma, 187 passing yards per game allowed. That's good. That's good for 58. That's not like terrible, but it's not great either, for sure, especially considering who you've played so far at this point. But Definitely some high spots on this team. But look, man, here's the problem: Kendall Dolby, Gentry Williams. Those are guys that didn't dress out last week, and this is where I get really concerned because while I love Woody Washington and Billy Bowman, I think those are really, really strong pieces. Robert Spears Jennings, I like as well. They're at the other safety spot. I don't have a ton of questions there. You're incredibly thin at nickelback right now, which they call the cheetah. Um, you're incredibly thin, and if you don't get somebody back, it's it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough there in the middle of the field with all these weapons that Tennessee's got. Gentry Williams is one of your returning starters on defense. If you don't have him back, that's a big problem as well. That's one of your starting corners, and you're just absolutely going to need his help. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens, on Saturday. This is what makes me hesitant to bet this football game. If you're betting on the Oklahoma side, because it's like you just don't know who's going to play, and that makes it really tough. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like what Kenai Walker, the cornerback, has been able to do. 3 pass breakups so far. He's played pretty well for Oklahoma, but this is and I think that the Oklahoma secondary has been pretty good. Overall, they're definitely a defense that's built similar to Tennessee. Really, they're built up front. Um, they got to win up front to help the passing game out. I think that the passing numbers for this defense is a little bit skewed because the offense has played so poorly and they haven't extended drives. They've left the defense out there. So if the offense plays a little bit more complementary football, I think that the secondary looks a little bit better as well. But when you look at the Tennessee pass catchers, they're so deep. Art. I mean, this is one of the deepest, if not the deepest, receiving group in college football. Outside of these four, I mean, you still got Holden Stays, who might be the most talented tight end. We're still kind of waiting on a breakout game for him. It seems like it's been the Miles Kitselman show so far. I don't really expect that to continue necessarily. I think they're both really good tight ends, but Holden Stays was kind of the guy going into the season that Tennessee fans had circled and said, yeah, this is our tight end that's going to go out and be our pass catching weapon. He's playing pretty well though. And then the 5-star freshman Mike Matthews, he came on last week. I don't know if you're going to be able to keep him off the field much longer with the way that he was playing and some of the acrobatic catches that he was making, and just looks like an absolute stud out there. So get him involved. Get these 4 pass catchers involved. It's going to be a long day for this secondary for OU. They're going to have to find some ways to turn the ball over, hit some pass breakups and things like that. And that, to me, that's really about the only way that this secondary beats this wide receiver group, because, man, this group's deep. This group's deep for Tennessee. One of the best that we've seen in a long time, not just for Tennessee, but in the SEC in general. And I think that they're gonna have their numbers this week for sure.
Very interesting to me that this week that the number hasn't moved. This is one of the only games that we're covering this week that the line hasn't moved. Have you noticed that? It's been at 7 since our early thoughts episode on Sunday. So, I mean, there can only be 2 reasons for that. The money's even coming in on each side for OU or Tennessee, which is possible. I don't know where the money's going on this one, what direction. Or Vegas is holding in there for a reason or another. So either way, I'm interested to see kind of where the money goes at the end of this week. I'll be completely candid with you, Mason. I've already got my money on -7 Tennessee. That was that was the first line, because my anticipation, Mason, was that the line was going to go up. That was, I was thinking that, all right, so it's starting at 7, we'll probably end at 10. That's what I thought, but it's not moving. And I did that before I did my deep dive, just because I was trying to get some value on a bet. I mean, you got to watch these things at the beginning of the week, guys. If you're not watching at the beginning of the week, you're probably getting less and less value on whatever you're betting by the week, weeks in. But I think this game's going to be closer than what people think.
I do too.
I
I do too. I'm staying away from this game from a betting perspective.
yeah.
There's too much emotion in this game and in college football in general. I think that Tennessee is a better program right now, but playing on the road, OU gets their first chance in the SEC. Um, I think that this place is going to be electric. It's a night game. I mean, there are so many intangible non football factors involved with this. The Josh Heupel story. There's just a lot of emotion built up into this game that I don't recommend betting it. I don't even recommend betting the over under. We've seen this story time and time again, and it doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. I've heard nobody pick OU and the points. I've heard nobody
Yeah.
pick OU to cover in this
And why
game,
is
and
the line not moving? And that was my whole point. Nobody's
it's a
picking OU,
huge it is
and the
a
line's
huge
not moving.
concern. It's a huge concern for me. Um, I would lean with you, Mark. I would lean Tennessee to cover, but I think I really do kind of feel like it's going to be a close game, and that my heart's telling me that this is going to be a really close game and an instant classic type of matchup. I think Tennessee gets the win at the end of it, but we're going to learn a lot about these teams, and I think that both of these teams are going to walk away with respect for the other team by the end of this game because I think it's just going to be a super emotional battle here, and I cannot wait to watch it. This is to me I think this is the best game of the year so far, and I think it's going to play out that way as well.
Yeah, it's got all the makings for it. Um, now, there's a possibility Tennessee runs away with this. I'll
Yeah,
admit that. There's a possibility. I don't see there being a possibility that Oklahoma can run away with it. But I know what all y'all are saying in the comment section and all that, and I know you love your Tennessee balls, and I'm super impressed with Tennessee. And if this is a close game, it doesn't mean that Tennessee's not as good as what we thought. Okay, it doesn't mean that at all. Let me tell you something. Do you think that Georgia struggling with Kentucky last week had any bar or effect on Georgia being able to or not able to win a national championship? No, it didn't. Tennessee wins this game by one. It's not going to matter at the end of the year if Tennessee, wins all their football games or they're 11-1 and they're going to the college football playoff. It's not going to matter if they won this game by one. This game, no matter the outcome, I really, I'm really just looking forward to it. I know this is going to be a really fun one, um, and the closer it gets, the more I feel like it's going to be a close game. I think Oklahoma's best football is going to be towards the end of the football season this year. Let's see if we
absolutely.
can let's see if we can get a glimpse of it in this football game, and that'll tell us a lot about where Oklahoma's at as they enter the SEC. All right, guys. Hey, whoever's watching, thank you all so much. I'm going to get to some of your comments here. Um, appreciate you guys being patient. Patient. If this
Hey, Mark,
was,
before you do that, where
uh
are we going next so I can get my notes pulled up?
let's go
You want to go
to
SC Michigan?
yes. Let's do that one.
Okay,
Uh,
carry on.
Darth Ducky commented and said, "If this was at Tennessee, it wouldn't even be a game." Um. Well, yeah, you're. I mean, that's definitely possible. Look, we're gonna know more about Oklahoma and specifically Jackson Arnold whenever he goes on the road to Auburn here in a few days, or excuse me, here in a week or two. Um, I think it's next week, but that's a tough place to play, and we'll see. We'll see what's up. Um, look, you don't know how these young guys are going to react when they go on the road in an environment like this. I don't care if they're 5 stars. I don't care if they're 15 stars. I don't care if they're Carson Beck. I don't care if they're Quinn Ewers. I don't care if they're Arch Manning. I don't care if they're fucking freaking Peyton Manning. Excuse me. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. This is the SEC. This is a big time college football matchup right here. The pressure's on. Throw all that stuff out the window. It's going to be a closer game than what people realize. I really do believe that. Bet the over, Darth Ducky says. What do you think about that, Mason? If you were going to bet the over or under in that football game, what would it be?
I would bet the under, honestly, because I look at this and I say, I feel really strongly about OU being able to stop the run, um, for the most part for Tennessee. I mean, this isn't going to be a 300-yard rushing game for Tennessee, so I feel pretty good about them being able to stop the run on defense. If Tennessee runs away with this game, I could still see it being like a 40-10 type of game. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about that. You know, Tennessee plays really fast, but I think on the flip side, and this is something we probably should have mentioned, but OU is going to want to play slow. They're going to want to hold the football, keep it out of Nico's hand, and this this OU or this Tennessee offense. I mean, they're going to want to slow the game down and limit possessions. That's going to be a big part of what they try to do here. So I don't know. I think the line's set to make you want to bet the over, but the under is probably the play here.
Yeah, and look, to be completely frank with you, Darth Ducky, you I think your guess might be as good as ours. I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows? This thing could be going to hit the under, and then somebody throws a pick six in the last minute trying to score in 2 minutes. I mean, that's college football betting. So if you feel like the over, Darth Ducky, hit it. You know what I'm saying? Don't bet your mortgage on it though. Um, Tia Maria, hey Tia Maria, do you think the OU quarter will have any time to throw it? I know what you were trying to say, but I had to read it how you typed it. Um, will the quarterback for OU have time to throw it? I think so. I don't think Tennessee's going to bring the blitz. Now, there is a caveat with that. If Oklahoma can't block just the four down linemen that are on the line for Tennessee, then yeah, it's going to be a really bad night for Oklahoma. I mean, you've got to be able to, you know, you've got to be able to block that defensive line without the blitz, obviously. So I don't think Tennessee blitzes a ton. I just don't. We covered that to an extent on that video just now. Michael, our starters have played a max of 7 quarters of the last 12, and the stats are still crazy. GBO, yeah, dude, I know, man. It it really is amazing what Tennessee's done this year. The point, and I forgot to mention this stat, but this was a very interesting stat that I actually got from Brent Venable. Um, Tennessee, their first 3 games, and I know they weren't SEC matchups, but of any SEC team through 3 games, the largest point differential ever through 3 games of any SEC team. So
No touchdowns
breaking
allowed.
breaking records. It's
Yeah.
literally a record-breaking offense already. Jason McElreath. I hope I'm saying that right. I should have just said Jason M. Though. Sorry to put your full name out there. That's my bad. If Oklahoma can't run the ball, the game could get out of hand. I'm with you 100% on that one, dude. And I'll take it one step farther, Jason. If Oklahoma can't establish something early, they're going to get in obvious passing situations. Like you're going to, we talked about it a little bit. Mason, you just said something about it. Oklahoma's offense has to be their best defense. Like you've got to sustain drives here. And to sustain drives, you're going to have to be able to keep the defense off balance by being balanced, run and pass, run and pass. If Oklahoma gets behind early in this football game, that's where Tennessee gets these big blowouts. People get behind, and then they start feeling like they need to throw the football. And then if you can't throw it, obviously that's bad. But beyond that, the clock ain't running. So then when you do, eventually get stopped, you got to go send the football over to Tennessee again. And then Tennessee scores again. And then you feel like you need to throw, you go 3 and out, or you got 6 plays and out, or whatever. Then Tennessee gets the ball back and they score again. It's a real chicken or the egg thing they got going on there. So you got to be balanced. You can't let things get out of whack as far as that goes in these football games. The only teams that I've seen over the last few years that have been able to do that are Georgia and Alabama, and I think that's for obvious reasons. Georgia and Alabama has had better players over the last couple of years. I think that's pretty much the only reason they've been able to be successful against it. And there's still been moments where especially Alabama. Obviously, Tennessee beat Alabama not very long ago. So the goalposts are still in the river, I assume. All right, guys. Thank you so much for commenting. We're going to get to the next game. The rest of these are going to be a lot faster. We just felt like that one deserved a little more oomph. I put a lot of work into those graphics and stuff, trying to make sure that I covered everything. This game that is a tough one. There, I can't wait till 7:30 p.m. on Saturday night to watch that one. That
You're
is
not going to
gonna be
find
beautiful.
an hour-long deep dive at many other channels on that game. So you're welcome, Tennessee and
Yeah,
OU
yeah,
fans. That was but it was a treat, honestly, for us. That was a fun breakdown.
absolutely, absolutely. I feel like I know a lot about those two teams. I can tell you that. All right, let's get ready to go into our next one. Y'all put your comments in the comment section. Let us know what you think about these games we've got coming up. And hit that thumbs up, guys. Thank you again for watching. Sure do appreciate y'all. All right. Southern California travels to the Big House. It's their first matchup as a Big Ten member. Michigan will be the host. 3:30 p.m. Eastern. USC is favored by 6, and the over/under is set at 46.5. At least at about 2:30 this afternoon. Whenever we were putting this stuff together, it's no secret what this football game is about. Michigan's offense has been atrocious, specifically the passing offense. Rushing offense has been pretty good, especially considering everybody in the world knows what's coming every time Michigan gets the football. But Michigan quarterbacks in 2024 have thrown more interceptions than touchdowns at this point. And the offense has just sputtered. And I've come to the conclusion that Michigan and Sharon Moore and staff have just been left to pick up the pieces of what is a shambled resemblance of last year's existence. This team won the national championship last year, and they were as well balanced gets. And this team is the complete opposite of that this year. The defense is not half bad. Don't get me wrong, not half bad. But the longer the season goes on, the more this offense is going to leave this defense out to dry, Mason. On the other hand of that, we know what USC and Lincoln Riley, we know what they bring to the table offensively, especially Lincoln Riley. He's going to have a good offense, guys. And I think this USC offense is really just getting going, to be honest with you. We saw him face off against LSU in the beginning of the season. I felt like there was a lot of issues with USC and their red zone. Kind of who's the go-to guy, who's scoring the touchdowns here. I thought there was a little bit of, first game of the year, we're still trying to figure it out type vibes going on. And as the years went on, I feel like there's been more continuity with the offense. I don't really have any questions there. Woody Marks has done a good job in the rush game, coming over from Mississippi State. If you don't know, a transfer running back. I like Xavier Branch, Zachariah Branch, all the guys over there. But defensively is where USC has made all the changes. D'Anton Lynn comes in. He's changed things up. The defense, while it's still not deep, they've always had talented players. Now they seem to be playing in their positions and not just a mosh posh of 3, 4, and 5-star guys just running all over the place. They seem to have figured some things out. They're on probably a 2-year journey to get this defense to elite status or anything like that. But USC has figured out a way, I believe, to make their defense serviceable. And I have to say, probably one of the best medicines for a defense that's trying to figure things out is to play a Michigan offense, just to be honest with you. Mason, what is your take on this game? We've got some of the numbers up here on the screen. It's what you would expect as far as USC goes offensively there. But not as good defensively as you would think, probably in some spots for Michigan. and really, really bad offensively. What do you think about this football game, and what are some of your keys to victory and kind of points of contact that you're looking at?
Well, I think since we're talking about USC's offense versus Michigan's defense, we'll get to the Michigan offense here in a minute. But for USC this week, look, they were on a bye last week, so a lot of these stats that you're seeing as far as total yards and things like that, that stuff will change pretty quickly. But they've been really effective on third down, 47.37%. If you extrapolate that and you continue that through the end of the year, that you're not going to be 35th in the country. You're going to be like top 15 in the country. That's a really good number, if not number one in the country. I mean, a lot of these teams have such good success on third down because they've been playing a cupcake schedule. USC's not dismissed from that category, although they did have LSU, which, when you look at LSU's defense, they're better than they were last year, but that's not necessarily a great defense.
Right.
So, but the offense has been really good. They've scored in the red zone a pretty good bit. I think maybe one trip that they didn't score in the red zone. So they've had good success there. And what's kind of surprising about this offense is the run game has been really effective, like you said, with Woody Marks, which USC does tend to have at least one good running back under Lincoln Riley, or Lincoln Riley offenses in general, not just at USC. But then, you look at the pass catchers, and look, going into the season, I would have said, Zachariah Branch is probably your leading receiver. Deuce Robinson would be up there. But there are three players that are ahead of those two, and it's Lake McCree, 9 receptions, leads the team, 137 yards, leads the team. No touchdowns yet. Got to find a way to get these guys in the end zone. Kyron Hudson, another one, 6 receptions, 99 yards, no touchdowns. Kyle Ford, 4 receptions, 80 yards, no touchdowns. So as good as this USC's offense has been, they've kind of lacked the explosive plays in the passing game. That's a little bit of a that's a little bit of a surprise to me. Going into this week, we're headed into week 4 now. A little bit of a surprise there, but Woody Marks has kind of made up for some of that. He's got 29 attempts, 171 yards. Remember, that's just in 2 games, but 3 touchdowns over those 2 games. Quentin Joyner, 14 attempts, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns in those 2 games. Both of them have been really effective, and a big part of the success of this offense that I think is still kind of growing, with Miller Moss, a lot of new pieces on this offense coming in. They lose a lot of the pass catchers from last year's team, and so far they've produced, and I've been really impressed with Miller Moss and the offense. I thought that they would be a step back from where they are right now. But I think that they're on pace to, by the end of the year, be one of the top probably 10 offenses in the country, based on what we've seen from other teams so far who might be ahead experience wise. I think that this USC offense has got the talent to really do something special. What I've probably been most impressed with, though, on this offense is the offensive line. We had questions about the offensive line going into this season. So far, they've answered the call, they've answered the bell, they've held up pretty well in the passing game, and they've also obviously been able to do some pretty good things up front with the rushing attack, averaging 5.3 yards per carry rushing. That's pretty good, considering we had some serious questions about their offensive line heading into the season. We were not high on them when we did our preview at all. I think that they're a little bit ahead of schedule. And again, this is an offense that's getting better week over week. A lot of new players, a lot of inexperience. They're ahead of schedule, in my opinion. For Michigan's defense, they're behind schedule from where we had them. We thought that this would still be one of the best defenses in the country, and it still might be. But the offense has not played complementary football. They're not extending drives. They're leaving this defense out to dry. And this is a defense that, as good as their secondary players are, that they're really, really good up front on the defensive line. And if you're getting those guys gassed and the offense isn't extending drives, that's going to hamper any defense. But for a defense that's as physical up front as Michigan's is, it's it's produced some issues for Michigan, and I don't quite understand it. I think that when you look at who they have in the middle with Grant and Graham, look, these are two of the best defensive tackles in the country. But it seems like they're getting double teamed pretty well, and kind of getting covered up. They're not producing a ton of stats, and teams are just kind of going right at them up the middle, and they haven't really had an answer yet. Um,
Yeah.
if you're slowing down this pass rush for Michigan, I don't care how good your secondary players are, they're going to lose. They're going to lose, and they're going to lose this week against a really talented wide receiver group for USC here. I think that Michigan has to feel really good about this game being played at home. That's going to play a huge factor. But ultimately, if you're asking me to compare the two, I think this USC offense is a tier, maybe two tiers above the Michigan defense right now, which is not something I would have said going into the season.
Let's talk about the USC defense against that Michigan offense for a minute here. It's a much improved USC defense. You can see some of the numbers there. I mean, not all of them are earth shattering. Been really, really good in the red zone, getting people knocked back and taking points off the board. That's a big deal. Third down percentage allowed. That's just a massive, massive improvement so far this year. 29.17% third down allowed. That's good for 31st in the country. And this early in the season, that's really good. 31st is really good because some of these teams have got some crazy numbers to start the year off. So to be in the top 40 at this point is really, really good. And that's the watermark that we set out for this team and the goal that we had kind of set out for this team in the offseason, kind of our first and long college football show, most improved trophy is it might be headed out to California because this group is just a whole lot better. They're just in all aspects of the football game, and they just needed a composer, man. They needed somebody waving the sticks and telling everybody, what their job was, and it seems like the defense, everybody has a sense of ownership now, and everybody knows their responsibilities. That wasn't the case last year, and they're going to look really, really good against a Michigan offense that, let's just face it, it's just completely depleted. You return one guy on the offensive line. You return Colston Loveland at tight end. And the rest of this is kind of a mosh posh of guys that, were left behind from last year's national championship team. Michigan was able to run the football real good last week. I think that USC has the guys on defense to be able to match up against this Michigan offensive line. Now, depth wise, I'm not sure that this USC defense is ready to hang in, for the long haul necessarily, talent wise. I think there's a pretty good drop off from their first string to second, but I think that this is one of the most improved sides of the football for any college football team in 2024, at least so far in the 2024 season. Now, Michigan's offense, we talked about it. They can run the football. And I'll go ahead and let y'all know, I saw on the last slide I messed up a couple of stats, so I'm sorry about that. And it was specifically the national rankings. It wasn't the numbers themselves. It was the ranking that I'd messed up on. So apologize for that. Hopefully I did the rest of these correctly. But Michigan just can't throw the football, man. I mean, you got Davis Warren, nobody wanted Davis Warren coming out of high school. I mean, I hate to say that. I'm not trying to be mean or anything. Nobody wanted me at quarterback coming out of high school, but I didn't play quarterback in high school. So, look, I mean, the guy had 0 stars. Alex Orji obviously can't throw, can't hit the broad side of a barn. Otherwise, he'd be playing some more quarterback at this point. So, I don't know what they do. They're going to try to run the football, obviously. 5.24 yards per carry. That's good for 42nd in the country. But you can see the passing yards per game. You can see the yards per pass right around the 120th mark. That's just horrible. Points per game, 99th. That's not going to get it done. So even if Michigan's defense hangs in there in this football game, which I think they might, they're not going to score enough points to win this football game. You're going to have to rely on your defense to get a pick six or a fumble return for a touchdown or something like that, maybe a couple of them to be able to win this football game. Now, Is it a blowout for USC? I don't think it's necessarily a blowout. If they do run away with it, I think it'll be at the end. Um, but this is another one that I've already bet. Just to be completely frank with you, I've already put money on USC on this one, and you know, I put my money where my mouth is, and that's exactly what I did this week. And I'm on USC. What do you think?
Well, it's tough to really measure this Michigan offense. Just yesterday, Alex Orji was announced the starter for this team. I think that's a huge update. You know, that's a big
Until he
deal.
throws 3 picks and then it's halftime. They're like, all right, Davis Warren is now announced the starter.
Exactly. Exactly. I think this is a Michigan offense that's missing. I believe it's Jack Tuttle, if I'm not mistaken. He was kind of the presumed starter if Alex Orji didn't get up to speed, which he didn't, before the season started. But the fact that we haven't seen a lot of Alex Orji adds some mystery to this Michigan offense. Obviously, we know that he's good at running the football. But when you're strictly running the football as a Michigan offense, you become one dimensional. And I think that D'Anton Lynn is going to have an answer for that. Also, I don't understand what the purpose of announcing Alex Orji as the starter several days before the game is played. Like, show some gamesmanship a little bit, Sharon Moore. Got to question you on that a little bit. I mean, I know you want to get Alex Orji some confidence built up, and say, hey, we feel really comfortable with him, and make that public. But I feel like you had a better opportunity there that's squandered to make everybody think that you're playing Davis Warren and then roll out Alex Orji at the last minute. I feel like that's a missed opportunity for Michigan here. But nonetheless, the offensive line, it's got to play a little bit better. They've been pretty good on the offensive line, but this is a young group. I do expect them to get better throughout the season, but this is going to be a huge test for them going up against USC's defensive line that's been pretty good in so far Lane, or excuse me, so far in Lincoln Riley's offense or defense so far. I think that one bright light or one silver lining, I guess, for his defensive and his defensive line in particular is that they've been able to pass rush. Hasn't been so much the case with D'Anton Lynn coming in. It's a little bit surprising, but it seems like he's more willing to drop back a little bit and not over pursue, which they did a lot of last year as a defensive front. They gave up a lot of rushing yards because they were over pursuing, trying to get to the quarterback and trying to make plays in the backfield and not really playing sound gap assignment. So that has been a little bit of a change. But the Michigan offensive line, how do they handle that? How do they handle the defensive line for USC? It's a big question for me. I think Michigan's finally starting to realize something that I've been saying since week one, that Khalil Mullings is your bell cow back. It's not Donovan Edwards. I know he's on the college football 25 cover and all that. He's not the better running back of the two. It's Khalil Mullings, and I think by a wide margin. You're starting to see him get a little bit more involved in the rushing game. He's going to be huge in this game. I think that you really need him to hit at least 100 yards in this one. You need Alex Orji probably to get close to 100 as well. If you're going to win, if that's your guy, and then you need him to throw for like 150. I think that's kind of the recipe for success for this Michigan offense. I think that they can do it. With that, you'll need your playmakers on the perimeter that have been non-existent so far to show up, make some plays. Samaj Morgan, huge amount of pressure on him to make some plays. I'm staying away from this one. I'm staying away from it. I don't know what the offense looks like with Alex Orji operating it for the length of a game. I think if it, and we're seeing this in college football right now, the old adage, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. I think that Sharon Moore and Michigan are finally starting to realize that, look, we got to live and die by this quarterback, by Alex Orji. We got to let him get the reps, let him get momentum building in a football game, give him the opportunities to play throughout the entirety of the game, and then let's see what we've got. Let's not judge him off of a play here and a play there, that he's not going to perform well. No, most quarterbacks wouldn't in that situation. So, um, again, I'm staying away from this one. I'm leaning USC to win. I could see a win but not cover type of situation. I could also see USC running away with it, similar to the Tennessee OU matchup that we just broke down. I could see if a team is going to run away with this one, it'll be USC. I think that's pretty obvious. It doesn't take expert analysis to really come to that conclusion, but I could see this, being played in the big house. I could see USC losing this game. I could see the defense for Michigan stepping up. Mason Graham kind of finally showing up in these games and wreaking some havoc in the backfield. Grant as well coming in and causing some a turnover or two. I could see it. We know Will Johnson is a ball hog. He may very well end up with another interception in this game. So yeah, I'm a little bit hesitant to bet on this one, but I'm leaning USC to win and probably cover if I had to choose.
Yeah, I'm gonna trust my gut. Yeah, and I agree with you, Mason. Look, you got to build towards something. If you can't let it be a completely wasted season. If you're Michigan, you got to get a quarterback in there that maybe he's a grower, and you got to grow him. I mean, you got to develop him, and the only way to get reps is to get reps. And so I agree with you. If you're going to have a bad season anyway, develop somebody, right? Do some
Right.
developing, at least something to hang your hat on. And I think that's what Michigan's looking for, and the reason why they announced him as the starter this week. Give me Southern Cal in that one. Going to be an awesome Big Ten matchup there. All right, guys, thank you so much. Answer a couple questions here, at least one. Great layout, guys. Jason McElroy. Hey, thank you, Jason. Certainly do appreciate it, man. You're a good audience, bud. we do appreciate it. We did a bunch of work this week on all these graphics and stuff. I'm trying to keep my energy up after that long first video we got. It you gotta shake it off a little bit after that first big one. I
No
get
doubt.
I get worked up over these daggum college football matchups, man. I find myself like, well, what if this? What if that? I feel like a coach or something. It was funny. I was watching Brent Venables thing today. He was saying, I went in the defensive room, and he was like, it was like a bomb went off in there. I mean, people are just freaking out. Everybody's yelling. And people are yelling. We got to do this. We got to do that. And he said, and I go into the offensive room, and it's, nice and quiet. Everybody's orderly. He was like, if I could die today and be reincarnated as a coach, I'd be an offensive coach. He said, and I say that fully respectively, because as a defensive coach, I'm absolutely going crazy over here looking at this Tennessee offense.
Yeah.
I'm sure he is. You want to do Utah at Oklahoma State next?
Yeah.
Those last two that
one.
we're going to do, guys, we'll do Clemson, NC State, and we'll do Illinois at Nebraska. We're going to be real fast on those last two because I got to do something. But Utah at Oklahoma State is shaping up to be one of the best games of the week. If it's a very close second, in my opinion, to the Tennessee and Oklahoma game this week. This one is just shaping up to be big as all get out and going to have college football playoff ramifications, no doubt. Excuse me. All right, let's jump into it. Thank y'all again for watching. Hit that like button. Utah at Oklahoma State, 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Utah now a 2.5-point favorite. Seen a lot of line movement already this week. Over/under set at 54 on this one. As I was just saying in our live show that we're doing, this one is just, it seems to be a game that is really kind of snuck up on everybody. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a really, really good football game. It looks like we've got Cam Rising coming back, Mason, to play football for the Utes. You get a couple of weeks there. If you don't know, he goes out in the Baylor game. Cost me some money. I was betting on Utah to cover the spread. Everything's going good. Cameron Rising's doing his thing. He gets hurt. He gets a laceration on his hand. He has to come out of the football game. Utah doesn't score another point. And everybody says, oh, no, here we go again. Well, then last week we hear Cam Rising, he can play. He can play, but he doesn't. And you get a little bit of development of your younger quarterback. I thought Utah looked decent last week, considering you got the backup quarterback. Been running the football good anyway. But it appears that he's ready to go, and the line just moved in the opposite direction. This thing started out, wasn't it 1.5 to the favor of Oklahoma State, and now it's moved to 2.5 in favor of Utah. Whenever we did our early thoughts on this one this week, it was minus Oklahoma State on this one. So, and the total, I believe, is actually going down on this one. So, something to really keep our eye on, or maybe it went up a couple. Y'all, do you remember what it was, Mason? Actually, I think I do. What are your thoughts on this football game, man? Because if Cam Rising's playing, obviously things are going to look a lot different. And we have no reason to believe that he's not, other than the fact that he didn't last week. What do you think about this football game?
Well, I think it all depends on whether or not Cam Rising plays and is healthy. I think that's a big deal in this football game. I think Utah has a better team overall. I really feel good about their defense and the way that they've been playing on defense. But when you look at Oklahoma State, this is a veteran-led defense. And look, actually, bigger picture here, these are two of the best coaches in the country overall, and personnel-wise and all that. These are two of the best staffs in the country that are going off and playing against each other. So I think that the coaching advantages are null and void. I think that it is a complete wash. These are two of the best to do it, not just in the Big 12, but in the country. Highly underrated coaches here, both of them. But going back to Oklahoma State, what's been really surprising is the fact that Alan Bowman has been winning them football games, and it hasn't been Ollie Gordon since week one. You look at the Arkansas game. Arkansas had Oklahoma State on the ropes at home, and then Alan Bowman kind of takes over in the fourth quarter. And we're thinking, what the heck? Where did this come from? Presley played really well in the fourth quarter. So that's been the biggest surprise to me is the Oklahoma State passing game. I don't think that anybody gave them enough credit going into the season. We really felt like it would be the Ollie Gordon show once again. And look, I feel like Alan Bowman has kind of taught us that as a quarterback, you can teach an old dog new tricks, because this isn't something that we've seen from him in his long career. I think this is the 7th year now. We haven't seen this type of Alan Bowman yet. And I think that could spoil Utah's plans overall. Does he continue to play at that level? Does he come back to earth a little bit? It's a big question mark to me in this football game. But I know what I got in Cam Rising. He's been very consistent in his play when he plays. And so that's kind of the question for me is whether or not Cam Rising plays and is 100% with the cut on his hands. It sounds like he is. I feel good about it, but we've seen this song and dance before, and we could very well be sitting there, Saturday evening looking at this game like, man, they pulled the rug out from under us once again. We don't get to see Cam Rising or something like that. I don't expect that to happen. It sounds like he's definitely going to play, but yeah, that's to me that he's the catalyst of this entire football game. The how Cam Rising plays is going to dictate who wins or loses this football game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if Isaac Wilson, the brother of NFL player Zach Wilson, if he's the starter for Utah on this one, which I do think he's the starter of the future, by the way, Utah fans, I think this is your quarterback of the future. But if he's starting in this situation this year in this game, I think that bodes poorly for your football team. Now, let's talk about Oklahoma State and some of the strengths that this football team possesses. You talked about Ollie Gordon. The last couple of games, he's had 17 rushes in each of the last 2 games, less than 50 yards rushing for each one of them. And I asked Oklahoma State fans earlier this week, I said, what is going on with Ollie Gordon? And I had one person tell me that he does have a very minor injury somewhere on his lower extremity, not a big deal. He's playing through that, but it's more of the fact that they're loading up the box. I mean, they're just loading up the box and daring this team to throw. And I think what it is a lot of defenses are hoping that Alan Bowman's going to make a mistake because, I mean, he has a lot in his career. He's got a lot of interceptions. He threw a lot of them last year, 15 or so. So I think that's kind of the thought process of a lot of these defenses is we're not going to let Ollie Gordon beat us. We're going to make this team get them in obvious passing downs and try to beat them that way. But the problem is, you've got Owens and Stribling and Presley. And as far as wide receiver trios go in college football, as long as all three of those guys are healthy right there, give me those three. And I think I can win some damn football games, man. Those three guys, as far as running out on the route, making explosive plays, they've been really, really good. Rashad Owens, especially a guy that we didn't get to see a ton of last year. Not as much as we would have liked. I think Stribling had some injury issues as well. So you feel really, really good about that. The offensive line was something we talked about in the offseason. One of the most veteran-laden offensive lines to have ever graced the field in college football history, just because of the fact of the COVID extra year and things like that. Can I just say that I feel like the offensive line has kind of been a disappointment, in my opinion. Not nearly as good as far as rush blocking as I thought they would be. I think they're pretty decent, maybe what we thought they were as far as pass pro, but as far as run blocking, it's just been disappointing. Can OSU figure out a way to get the pad levels lower and run the football? I don't know if this is a good game for that. This is a senior laden defensive line for Utah. We'll kind of talk about that here in just a minute, but they got a bunch of dudes over there. I mean, they got a bunch of big old dudes and one of the most well coached football teams in all of America. So I like this Oklahoma State offense. They're going to score some points. There's no doubt about it, and it certainly is the strength of this team. What do you think about the OSU offense in this one?
Well, I mean, looking at their offense, I kind of said what I needed to say there. This is an offense that's centered around Ollie Gordon. We haven't seen him utilized as much, which is actually scarier if you're an opposing defense because how do you game plan for this offense at this point?
Pick your poison.
That's right, absolutely. Because if you don't account for Ollie Gordon, which every team that has faced Oklahoma State so far, that's been what they've done. They've accounted for Ollie Gordon, and they said, Alan Bowman, if you're going to beat us, just beat us. And he beats them. He's been beating them for the past couple of weeks. And so, to me, for this Utah defense, which is a great segue into our next topic, the defense for Utah is going to have to do both, which I do think that they've got a total defense that can handle the run game and handle the passing game. But at the same time, scheme matters, right? So how does Utah play both? You can't really play both. You kind of have to play one or the other. You can do some zone stuff and rush forward. And if your guys up front win, then you've succeeded. But that's a tough ask. Maybe they do have the guys up front to win against this Oklahoma State offensive line. You mentioned them being a little bit lackluster so far this season. Maybe that is the game plan. But so far, I think as a unit, this Utah defense has played really well. I think that they will be up for the challenge for this offense of Oklahoma State. And I really feel confident that up front, these big Samoans up front for Utah are playing better than most teams in the country right now. And I don't see that ending right now. You see what they've been able to do on third down, 22.22%. That's fifth in the country. A lot of that is dependent upon what you do on first and second down. And they've done a really good job of bending but not breaking, not allowing a lot of explosives, keeping the ball in front of them. It doesn't take expert analysis to see that, but ultimately to me, the Utah defense kind of gets the edge, in my opinion, over the Oklahoma State offense. Which a casual college football fans probably not going to say that, but they've been better than I expected them to be at this point, considering what they lost off of this defense from last year.
Yeah, and they've been led by those two guys up front. Connor O'Toole has had a really, pretty decent year so far, but Van Fillinger is one that has really tore it up. 16 tackles, 3 pass deflections, and 3.5 sacks already this year. He's an absolute problem there on the end. And as I said, Connor O'Toole, 12 tackles for him, 2.5 sacks for him this year. So, and a forced fumble as well. So those are two senior guys that are certainly going to be able to, you know, I'm thinking they're going to be able to get in the backfield, Mason, and I think they're going to be able to cause some issues. And I think
Yeah.
it's going to be tough sledding again for Oklahoma State here. I don't think you're going to have a ton of success running the football over and over again. We saw Oklahoma State in that first game against Arkansas, which I know it was overtime. It had an overtime game and everything. But Ollie Gordon ran the ball 28 times. I don't think you see that in this game. Um, that I feel like that would just be beating your head against a wall in this game. Utah is really, really stout. You can see all the stats there, guys. They're not bad at anything really on defense. I think they're strong on the defensive line, and I think they're pretty strong in that secondary as well. Kareem Reed, Zemiah Vaughn, a couple of guys that have done really, really well this year. And look, a good defensive line that can provide pressure and havoc, um, matched with what we think is a pretty good secondary, decent players for sure. It's like peanut butter and jelly. A defensive line and a good secondary can win you some football games, and I think that's what Utah has right here. And Kyle Whittingham has been known for, kind of just his peanut butter and jelly style college football teams, man. Just kind of plain Jane, but we're not doing anything special. We're not running trick plays. We're not doing anything gimmicky, but um, line up and see what you got. And that's what Utah. That's their attitude in this football game. They think they've got a better overall football program in team than Oklahoma State does. Utah fits right in the Big 12. It's hard to believe they were even in the Pac-12 with the style of football that they play and everything. They were not anything like a Pac-12 program that I have in my head. I know the Pac-12 was good last year, but when I think Pac-12, I think a bunch of teddy bears, and they are definitely not that, man. That is 100% the truth. We've already talked about the offense some, but look, Micah Bernard has been really good. Um, which way do you want it from these receivers? Dorian Singer has been good so far this year. Brant Keithy, we've seen him line up and take direct snaps on this offense. We've seen him catching passes. We've seen him scoring touchdowns. We've seen it all from Brant Keithy. We know what he's able to do. It just all depends on Cam Rising. I think he's going to play. I think we'll be good. Yeah, I feel good about that. Some of these numbers are a little skewed. I am impressed with the way that Utah's been able to run the football without Cam out there, because when Cam's not out there, it's kind of like it's the opposite of like if you brought Herschel Walker in the game back in the day, everybody knew what was up, right? Herschel's running up the middle, Herschel's running it left, and then he's running it right, and then we rinse and repeat, right? When Cam Rising's not in the game, you know what Utah's going to be trying to do, and they're going to be trying to run the football. But it hasn't mattered this year. Last year, I felt like they beat their head against the wall over and over multiple times. Seems like they're figuring out ways to, kind of move on. Because look, hey, life after Cam Rising is coming before you know it. That's going to be here at the end of this season. So I think Utah over the last couple of weeks has been able to kind of work on a couple of things that they're going to probably utilize next year, right? Especially Isaac Wilson, who I think will be the quarterback of the future, but you don't want to see him this week, that's for sure. We'll know more about this offense after this game. I love Money Parks. I love the options that this team has. Dejon Stanley is actually leading the team in receiving yards. He's a sophomore, a guy that we didn't even hardly talk about in the offseason or preseason. So you got a nice little surprise there, which is always good. And as we said, the Utah defensive line has been really good, 10 sacks so far. So I think Utah's kind of got it on both sides of the ball, just as long as their playmakers show up to play.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Micah Bernard, the running back who's played really, really well for this team, especially in Cam Rising's absence. But one of the last guys you mentioned, Dijon Stanley, probably the better running back of the two. He just tends to do it in a different way. He's been doing it in the passing game on 5 receptions, 155 yards. That's 31 yards averaging on those 5 catches with 2 touchdowns. Been an absolute explosive playmaker. I mean, he is the definition of explosive when he's catching the ball out of the backfield. Is he going to be able to sustain 31 yards per catch? No, he's not. But
He had a
he adds a
75-yard touchdown there, which skewed it a little bit, but
right.
he's been great.
Yeah, he's been great, and he adds a little bit of a different dynamic. Other outside of Michael Bernard and Mike Mitchell, Um, he gives you that pass catching weapon out of the backfield that many of the great offenses in college and in the pros these days, they've got one of those guys that can do that, and it kind of completes this offense for Utah. Brent Keithy, I mean, he might be the best tight end in the country. I think he's on a very short list of best in the country. And once again, Utah's got a fantastic tight end and a great option for a young quarterback when Cam Rising goes out. I mean, you've got great running backs and a great tight end. Come on, man. That's all you can ask for as a young quarterback. And on top of that, you've got 4 guys who all have over 100 yards receiving. That's phenomenal. Money Parks, Dorian Singer, Dijon Stanley, and Brant Keithy, all over 100 yards so far on the season for this offense. What more can you ask for? I guess maybe a Cam Rising's what more you could ask for. Him actually playing in these games makes a big difference. And so with him playing in this game, I feel pretty good about Utah.
We'll talk about that OSU defense for just a minute. It's left a lot to be desired as far as, well, pretty much everything. I mean, let's just be honest. Red zone scoring, you can kind of point to that a little bit and say, well, they've backed opponents up and got them out of scoring position a few times, and that's good. Not many teams have got into the red zone. Most of the teams score from outside the red zone on this team. So, that you take from that what you will. Nick Martin is an absolute animal. Absolute animal. He's well on his way to have a bajillion tackles again this year. I really like him. He's got 34 tackles so far this year. Trey Rucker is a senior safety on this team. He's got 39 tackles. So he actually has more tackles than Nick Martin so far this year. Um, so couple of there's a couple of really good just ballers on this defense. It's crazy. Um, but overall, they just can't seem to, numerically or statistically, however you want to say it, they've just struggled. They've just absolutely struggled. Obi Ezigbo, he's a senior defensive end. He's got 12 tackles, 2 sacks. He'll be providing some pressure along with Nick Martin, who's got a couple of sacks himself. Like I said, I'm a huge Nick Martin fan. I like some of the pieces that they've got on this team, but man, statistically, they just have laid a stinker a couple of times, and um, I like the well-roundedness of Utah. Um, Obviously, I want a complimentary football team if I'm the coach or a fan of a team, and this team seems a little bit lopsided. But Mason, they've done well in the red zone, and they're averaging giving up 20.3 points per game defensively, which is top half in the country. So maybe they're just bend don't break. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. They're very top heavy. Nick Martin, Trey Rucker, both are top 6 in the country in total tackles, and they were 2 of the best last year. We mentioned it in our preseason breakdown, but when your safety is leading the team in tackles, it's not good. It's not good. That means that players are getting to the third level of the defense. Now he comes up and plays the run really, really well as a strong safety, probably the best in the country at
He
doing it.
knows he has to.
But yeah, but my point still stands. The safety shouldn't have that opportunity to get through 2 levels of the defense to be the one to make the tackle. That's not great. Obi Ezekbo is the other is probably the third bright light in this defense. He's been very good. He's been excellent in the pass rush. But this is a team that we said going into this offseason or during the offseason, heading into the season, is a veteran group. But that doesn't mean that they're a good group, right? They're veteran led, which helps in situations. But if you don't have the talent there, that's a scary situation. So to me, yeah, you've got three really good pieces that can kind of wreck a game, but the rest of the pieces just are not holding their end of the bargain. They're not pulling their weight here. Um, they're going to have to play much better against Utah if they plan on winning this game.
Got to get a turnover, right? I feel like you've got to get a turnover in this one, or two, and you've got to get a couple of sacks. Just like Oklahoma in that Tennessee matchup they've got this weekend, I think Oklahoma needs at least one interception and 3 sacks. And I think Oklahoma State needs to get 3 sacks and an interception in this game. That's what I think to win this football game. I feel like that's a padlock stat in my opinion. But all in all, this is going to be a really, really good football game. I do think this one ends up being really close. I think this one comes down to the very end. Um, I just like Utah. I don't, I liked Utah plus the points earlier this week. There's been a 5-point swing on this spread, and I assume that has everything to do with Cam Rising and people realizing that he's going to be able to play. How many points is he worth? I think he's worth more than 5. I think he's worth more than 5. So I've still got value here, I feel like, Mason, by taking Utah minus 2.5. When it starts getting up over 3, 3 being a key number, obviously, um, I start to get a little scared because, I think Oklahoma State has pop potential. There's no doubt about it. They absolutely do. They could get out. Oklahoma State could come out here and get out to a 21-point lead in this football game. It wouldn't surprise me. They're explosive as hell. It would not surprise me a bit. But then it wouldn't surprise me if Utah made their way right back in the football game. Here come the third quarter, fourth quarter, and we've got a ball game on our hands. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm. This one is just get your popcorn ready. Is all I got to say, because this is going to be must see TV. But give me Utah minus 2.5. OSU is a good football team. I've been on Utah since the preseason. Um, I try to exalt all my preconceived notions, but I still feel like Utah's a good football team, and I'm gonna stick with my gut on this one. Um, but I think Oklahoma State is a really good football team that you cannot mark off in the Big 12, even if they lose this football game, man. Because I don't think Utah's going undefeated, and um, I don't think your Big 12 champion is going undefeated this year.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those cases in the Big 12 where we've been saying all offseason there's a ton of parity along the Big 12, and it's going to make for an interesting conference. I think one of the most interesting conferences if you're looking at just from a competitive standpoint. Um, I don't think this game's going to be any different. I don't think it's going to be a Utah blowout or anything like that. I do have them favored. I think they're favored for a reason. I like Utah. I'll lay the points at 2.5. I think that if this game does end up being a 2-score game, it's going to be Utah that wins it by 2 scores. But we've seen some magic happen from Oklahoma State so far this season, and I think you could see more of the same. I think that you very well could see Oklahoma State win this football game. It's going to be back and forth. It's going to be a hell of a show. Very entertaining game to watch. I can't wait, but yeah, I like Utah on the points. Also at 54 points overall, give me
And
the
that,
under
by
on
the
that
way,
one.
before you say that, the number is going up. By the
Yeah,
way, the
give me the
total.
give me the under.
Okay.
I like the under in this play. I think it's going to be a pretty hostile environment. Utah may struggle early to score. I feel like in this type of matchup, these teams are going to be feeling each other out early on, and then the second half you'll start to see that number go up. But I could see this being like a 6 to 10 type of game going into halftime, and you feel really good about a cover at that point. But yeah, I think I feel probably better about the under than I do Utah covering.
Well, guys, if you feel good about the under, what you should do is wait till closer to the weekend because the number is trending up. So the more, if you feel like unders to play, guys, let it go up and then bet under. Right? Give yourself as much cushion as you can. Little betting advice here from First and Long College Football Show. We're not giving you the picks. You're betting your money, but be smart with it. And that's one way that you can be smart is let the market do what it's going to do first. Thank y'all so much for watching. Y'all hit the like button for us if you could. Really help circulate the video around the internets. Mason, let's talk NC State at Clemson. Um, and then I think I'm gonna have to go, man. Can you? And I may just have to watch you from the car on the Nebraska one. Um,
Yeah,
hate to do
that's
that
fine.
to you, but I don't have much to. You did the Illinois homework anyway, and I'll be honest with everybody at home. I don't know much about Illinois, so I wouldn't be a ton of help to you anyway. But I gotta go catch a jet, man. I got a jet waiting on me up there at Hartsfield. Uh,
Oh yeah.
not Not. I have a van across the street waiting on me to go to work. Um, NC State at Clemson. Clemson is a 16-point favorite hosting their ACC rival. Over under set at 48.5. It's been a disappointing season so far for NC State this year, Mason. And it was a disappointing start for Clemson, I do believe, in the first game, but I think a lot of people understood that that may be a speed bump that Clemson's got to absorb and move on. They put it in the rearview mirror real quick, did what they needed to do against App State the following week, and then we're off there in week 3 for the bye. NC State, on the other hand, I said it hasn't went very good, and I believe that's an understatement. Actually, this NC State defense has just been rocked, and offense hasn't been able to come up with a ton of answers, not scoring a ton of points. At least statistically for this team. We'll pull up some of the key players and keys to victory here in a minute. But man, it's been tough. And Grayson McCall goes down injured, and everybody's been talking about C.J. Bailey, who came in the game last week, went 13 for 20, did his thing, 156 yards, 27 rushing yards, did not throw a touchdown, but he has been named as a starter. So I guess Grayson McCall is done. Maybe he I don't know what happened with him. I guess I don't know how long he's done or whatever. CJ Bailey has been named the starter. Mason, I don't think this makes any difference in this football game other than the fact that now you got to go on the road with a guy who doesn't have any experience, which, yeah, that sucks, but is the upside for CJ Bailey higher than Grayson McCall? I feel like we all thought Grayson McCall was going to be this guy that we bring in from this lower classification, this lower level team. Look what he's done there. And then I think he got to NC State and we realized, oh, snap. He was part of a system. He was a system quarterback. We didn't realize that. And he did it at a lower level as well. It just didn't translate. It did not translate. I don't think it was ever going to translate. So I think this was a good move moving on to C.J. Bailey and go ahead and turn the page because NC State fans were pretty exhausted by what they had seen already in the first quarter of the season for NC State. Don't waste any more time. Turn the page. You haven't lost an ACC game yet, so make it happen. What are your thoughts on this game? Obviously, C.J. Bailey going against that Clemson defense is going to be really tough. That's tough. That's a tough assignment to come out and go handle that your first time out. Oh, and by the way, it's not a neutral site game. You got to go to Clemson. You got to go to Death Valley. Man, that's tough. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Clemson, for the struggles they've had on offense, which we didn't see that in week 2 against App State. It seemed like they finally found some things with their offense. I I think that that's going to continue, but going back to what you were talking about with CJ Bailey, um, this is something that we said on Sunday's show that CJ Bailey should be the starter. And I think Dave Doran might have just been watching it and said, you know what? I think that those two guys are right. Those two knuckleheads over there, they might just be right about this guy. But no, I mean, I kid, but you look at what he is from a physical standpoint. It nearly 6'7", runs like a gazelle. And I think you've got to like the weapons, or him as a weapon, I guess. And you couple him with KC, and I feel like you've got two guys who could kind of take over a football game if everything goes well. He's got a tall order ahead of him with this Clemson defense. I don't really like it as I guess it will be his first start. I'm not sure if he started last week or not, but ultimately this is a tough test, and this is a game where you're going to find out a lot about yourself, and it'll be a great measuring stick for him. I don't really like him in this matchup. I don't know that he's necessarily the answer to win the football game, but I do like the skill traits that he possesses. Probably just an unfinished product at this point, but who knows? Maybe he goes out here. They install some offensive packages specifically for him and his game, not for Grayson McCall's game, and maybe he's able to go out there and drive the football and turn this into a football game. Because I mean, you see Clemson as a heavy favorite at 16 points. They're a heavy favorite for a reason. They're a much better, much more complete football team at this point. I would have leaned NC State going into the season. They've done nothing to warrant that at this point. And now I feel really good about Clemson heading into this football game.
Yeah, absolutely. NC State defensively, you talked about Clemson's offense and the struggles that they've had early in the season, and it looked really good against App State, no doubt about it. I think they've got exactly what the doctor ordered coming up, right? NC State's defense has allowed 30.7 points per game this year, and that is skewed by Tennessee. Tennessee came in there and just totally treated them like a skid mark in their underwear, right? I mean, it was just absolutely terrible. Put up, 59 points on them, 51, something like that. It was just an absolute melee attack. But they've averaged giving up 4.9 yards per carry rushing. That spells disaster whenever you've got a guy like Phil Maffa coming in, that's going to be hitting that line of scrimmage real hard, man. And he can make life pretty miserable for you if you can't tackle and you don't have gap integrity. And look, NC State doesn't really have either one of those. I don't think they're particularly great at tackling, and their gap integrity has just been terrible. So fundamentally, NC State's defense, you could have bet on them over the last few years, and you could have thrown darts in the dark, right? And you probably would have hit on NC State's defense. They've been pretty good over the last few years. Doesn't look like the same group to me this year. And then you couple that with an offense that struggled. Give me Clemson to cover here, Mason. If I'm going to bet this, give me Clemson to cover, because I'm not betting on a first-time starter going on the road to Death Valley to, cover a double-digit spread in a 48.5 point over/under. I'm just that's not happening here. I could honestly, I think the 48.5 is just dead on too. I mean, because I really see this game being like, 35-14 maybe, or 35-7. Somewhere in between there. It's not going to be particularly close, I don't think. Clemson's defense is going to be able to eat in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Clemson's offense has something to prove in this football game and going forward. Look, this was a team that struggled on offense last year, and Cade Klubnik mainly has been a quarterback that's been in question. He's the second quarterback for Clemson now in a row that's been in question, and so to me, couple NC State's defensive deficiencies so far with the fact that there's a little bit of a fire under this Clemson team, and I think that you, as Cade Klubnik, you should be able to go out and really win here, just head to head, and then on top of that, you've got the extra fuel to the fire here for Clemson to go out and really lay some points up. And then on the flip side, CJ Bailey coming in, first start, freshman quarterback. This isn't a great team to face your first time. your first time around. Overall, this Clemson defense has got pieces everywhere on the field, probably a little bit worse on the back end. But I think that the NC State offensive line, which has struggled so far this season, is going to have their hands full with this front seven of Clemson, and limit the ability of CJ to be able to stand in the pocket and really dish it out. You're going to see a lot of KC, end arounds, and they're going to try to get some quick throws to him and things like that. That's about the only way that CJ Bailey is probably going to be effective. All in all, I'm with you. Give me Clemson, and I'll lay all those points. I kind of like this. We'll have to wait until Thursday night on our best bet show to see if I pick it as a best bet. I'm kind of leaning that way, though. I feel pretty good about Clemson in this football game.
Yeah, and we talked about Clemson, the wide receiver room. Bryant Wesco, freshman out of Midlothian, Texas, emerging as a pop play threat. Somebody to watch. Jake Brenningstool, somebody we didn't mention in the breakdown there. Somebody certainly to watch as well. Definitely, we'll have an eye on this one. We'll see what C.J. Bailey can bring to the NC State Wolfpack. All right, guys, thank you so much. Mason, your daughter is commenting.
Love that.
That's hilarious. It's funny as hell. Hello, children of our family. All right. I got to get out of here, but Mason, you're going to take us through this next one. I'll listen to you while I'm on the road. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see y'all on Thursday for the betting show, and I'll talk to you tomorrow, Mason.
All right, man. Have a good night. All right, y'all. Let's keep it moving here. Let's see. So, Illinois at Nebraska. This is the Friday night game. Top 25 matchup. It's got the makings for a Big Ten slobber knocker, in my opinion. We've seen Nebraska so far make leaps in the past couple of years, really, but this year in particular, with Dylan Raiola coming in as a true freshman quarterback. He's been better than anybody could expect for a true freshman to come in and play and lead this offense. On the flip side, you've got Luke Altmaier, who's playing his best ball. Hasn't thrown an interception yet this season. And, really, I think when you compare these two programs, they're built pretty similar. I think for a casual fan looking at this game, you're probably thinking Nebraska could really run away with this one, but let's get into it. I don't know if the numbers necessarily lead us to think that. All right, so looking at the breakdown here, let's start on the Illinois side of the football. Some key players here. Luke Altmaier, 69.2%. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at as a quarterback. 647 yards, 6 touchdowns. As I said, no interceptions. That's pretty impressive. Running back Caden Fagan played really well in his last game, but 173 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaging over 4 yards per carry. That is getting it done for sure as a running back. And then you've got your 2 wide receivers. Pat Bryant's the leader of this offense for the most part. He's played pretty well. 235 yards, 4 touchdowns, averaging over 15 yards per catch. Excellent, right? A+ right there. And then Zachary Franklin, not sure how to pronounce that, but 173 yards for him. No touchdowns yet, but he's got big play potential. He'll find the end zone soon, I'm sure. Then you look at the Scott brothers, right? I know they're not actually brothers, but Miles Scott and Xavier Scott on the defensive side of the football playing really, really well. Miles Scott has 17 tackles already. I believe that leads the team, if I'm not mistaken, and 2 pass breakups, playing excellent as a DB. And then Xavier Scott, 12 tackles, a forced fumble, had 2 picks a couple weeks ago against Kansas, including a pick 6. I mean, the guy's been playing phenomenal. And then on the defensive line, Terah Edwards, 6 tackles, 3 quarterback hurries. This guy kind of adds a little bit of a different dynamic to the defense for Illinois. That's been great for seasons past. I think last year was a little bit of a lull for the defense for Illinois. They're making steps in the right direction so far this season, and I think they got the work cut out for them when it comes to Nebraska this week. Playing in Nebraska, playing in Lincoln, they're going to have the work cut out for them for Nebraska on the offensive side of the football, I mentioned it. Quarterback Dylan Raiola playing well beyond his years, looking great. Threw his first pick last week, but that's to be expected. He made a little bit of a freshman mistake. No big deal. Shake it off. You're doing fine. 73.8%, 670 yards through the air, 5 touchdowns, just the 1 pick. What more can you say about the guy? I mean, he's poised. He looks like a leader out there on the offensive side of the football, for the whole team in general. I mean, he's playing like a leader, and that's been very impressive. I think I don't know that I've been as impressed with a true freshman quarterback in a couple of years. He's well ahead of schedule, I guess, even as a 5-star coming in. I think he has exceeded expectations by far. The running backs, Dante Dowdle, 184 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaging almost 6 yards per carry. That's awesome. Emmett Johnson, he's been a little bit more of an efficient back, averaging 9.5 yards so far, 124 yards total with 1 touchdown. I think that you could see him start to get a little bit more involved as the season goes on. You try to mitigate the workload a little bit for these running backs in particular, but the whole team. You want to limit the impact that these running backs are taking. And Emmett Johnson gives you a great second option at the running back position. The leader in the wide receiver room so far this year has been Isaiah Nayor, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns, over 15 yards per catch. Big play potential written all over him. And it seems like him and Dylan Raiola really have a connection already, established this early in the season. That's a really good indication for future success. On the defensive side of the football, not a guy that's really going to light up the stat sheet, but MJ Sherman has been very disruptive at the linebacker position. He's got only 4 tackles on the year, but 1 tackle for a loss and 4 quarterback hurries. That's one of the best in the country so far through 3 games to have 4 quarterback hurries. That's excellent, especially out of the linebacker position. He's really shaping into form. This is a former 5-star guy, a Georgia transfer, and he's playing really good football so far this year. And then at DB, Isaac Gifford leads the team in tackles with 17. He's also found himself in the backfield a couple times and got 1.5 tackles for a loss. And then the big boy, Nash Hutchmaker, I think they call him the polar bear, 6 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss. Hasn't really lit up the stat sheet yet, but we know that he can be very disruptive in the middle of this defensive line. He is going to be a playmaker. He's probably getting a lot of double teams and things like that, so that can definitely affect the stat sheet. But nonetheless, he is definitely one of the key players to this entire football team, and especially for this defense. All right, some keys to victory. So for Illinois, pass protection equals pass success. And what I mean by that, when you look at what Illinois has done so far this season, they've given up 22 tackles for a loss so far this season. That's good for 29th in the country. And Nebraska has 22 tackles for a loss, which is 25th in the country on the defensive side of the football. So you really have good on good here. And we've seen Luke Altmaier so far this season really be able to take advantage of the defense when he's given the time. Look, Bryant and Franklin at wide receiver, they're pretty dang good wide receivers. And if you give Luke Altmaier time to find them, he's going to have success. It's a big ask for this offensive line, but I think that they match up pretty well against Nebraska's pass rush. I think that they will be able to hold up a pretty good bit. Create more turnovers for Illinois. If you're an Illinois fan, this isn't a stat that you're unfamiliar with, but they're second in the country so far in turnover margin at +8. They've been phenomenal at getting these interceptions, getting the fumbles forced and turnovers. It's been a big key to their success, particularly in that Kansas game. I mean, had they not had the turnovers that they had, I think they had 3 in that game, they probably don't win that football game. So it's a big part of their success so far. Got to keep that up. Got to keep that up and at least match what Nebraska does in the turnover margin in this football game to be successful. You are overmatched in this football game. There's just no way around it. When you look at just roster to roster, Illinois' got a lesser roster than Nebraska. That can't be understated in this football game. You got to find ways to limit possessions, turn the ball over, give it back to your offense, keep them on the field, extend drives, keep that pretty dominant Nebraska offense off the field as much as possible. Obviously, turnovers are the best way to do that. And then continued red zone success. So far this year, Illinois has scored 100% of the time that they've been in the red zone. Of course, that's first in the country, right? You can't be better than 100%. There are a lot of teams at 100%. But I think another interesting point is that they've converted 66.67% of those into touchdowns. That's a pretty good rate there when you're getting 7 points instead of 3. They've got to continue to have that success. And then on the flip side, and we'll kind of start to get into the keys to success here for Nebraska. Nebraska is 13th in the country in defending in the red zone. Opponents have scored on 60% of their red zone trips against Nebraska. That is elite. That is really tough to do for a defense to limit even a field goal at 60%. That's really good. And then when it comes to touchdowns, they've only given up 20% in the red zone. Very elite from this Nebraska defense in the red zone. Protect the football. I think that goes without saying, right? But when you look at what Illinois has been able to do in creating turnovers, I think that it's fair to say that a key to victory for Nebraska is to limit the turnovers, because if you're turning the ball over and with a freshman at quarterback, it's bound to happen in one of these games. If this is the game where you're turning the ball over a ton, Illinois will absolutely make you pay for it. So protect the football, keep it off the ground, keep it out of the opponent's hands, and I think without a turnover in this game for Illinois, I think Nebraska wins the game. I think that's kind of like just one of those padlock stats for this football game. And then for Nebraska as well, get to the quarterback. They've already got 9 sacks this season. That's really good for Nebraska. Can they get past the offensive line of Illinois? Britt Bielema, he hangs his hat on this offensive line, being a former offensive lineman himself. And he's going to have these guys coached up. He definitely will. So can you continue the pass rush success? I think that they do. Look, the spread's at 8.5 points in Nebraska's favor. The game is played in Lincoln. I don't see any way that Nebraska doesn't win this football game by at least 10 points unless Illinois continues getting the turnovers like they have so far this year. I think that this is kind of a come to earth moment for Illinois. I don't think that that's sustainable, and that kind of goes without saying. But if like I said, if Nebraska is able to limit the turnovers, they win this game. I think that they can win this game by 14 points, maybe even 20 points. But yeah, give me Nebraska in this football game. I like them to win pretty big, two scores, I think, at least. But overall, I do think that Illinois is a good football team, and this will be a huge win for Nebraska if they're able to get it done at home this week. All right. So wrapping it up here. Looks like we don't really have any other comments to get into. Hey, really appreciate you guys joining and watching today. Appreciate all the comments. Share this video, and keep an eye out for the video breakdowns as we release them. And then also come back and join us on Thursday night. We've got our best bets of the week coming. Please stay tuned to the channel. If you want to win some money with us, Thursday night is your night to do it. 7:30 Thursday nights. We're going to give you each probably about 10 bets each. Mark and I both will have our own bets, and we have a lot of fun with that. We have fun keeping up with it. We tell you how we did the week before. A lot of channels don't do that, but last week was not a good week for me. I'll be honest with you, but I'm going to fall on that sword next week, and we really hope that you all will come and join us as we give you our best bets of the week. for Marcus, who had to leave to go to work, but for Marcus, I'm Mason. Y'all have a good night. Thank you for joining the First and Long College Football Show.